What if I told you that Ferrari's greatest enemy in 2025 is neither in Red Bull nor in McLaren, but in his own wheels? How is it possible that the most anticipated car of the year does not work when you need it most? Today we are going to discover why Vasseur is so worried, and why neither Hamilton nor Leclerc can sleep calmly. The points table does not lie. Ferrari is currently the fourth force of the championship, far from McLaren and Mercedes and just over Red Bull, which has started the year with deep internal turbulence. The 94 points accumulated so far are a reflection of a project that does not take off. The initial illusion has given way to the silent frustration, the technical discomfort, and the careful statements of a team that knows that it runs at home in the next appointment, the GP of Emilia-Romagna, and that has very little margin of error. The most alarming is not the position in the classification of builders, but the descending trend that is glimpsed in performance. Ferrari has shown competitiveness flashes as in the practices of Australia or in China's long batches, but lacks constancy. That inconsistency has a very clear pattern: the inability to execute quick turns in optimal conditions during the classification sessions. And in a season where the technical parity between escuderias has reached historical levels, that is a condemnation. The SF25 was conceived as an evolution of the SF24, with key traction improvements, a greater aerodynamic load in the rear, and a weight distribution that should favor both Leclerc and Hamilton. He worked intensely to correct the problems of entry into curve and stability that plagued the car of the previous year, especially on high-load tracks. But what was promised as a controlled evolution ended up being an erratic behavior machine, with such a narrow performance window that it is easy to be out of the top 10 in classification due to an error of just a tenth of a second. This has created an unusual internal pressure atmosphere for Ferrari, not only because of the media expectations, but because internally the team knows that it is wasting the talent of two pilots capable of winning races. The pressure in Maranello is amplified by the context. This year there is no clear dominator. McLaren has the best car, yes, but has shown strategic weaknesses. Mercedes still depends on the evolution of Antonelli and the consistency of Russell. And Red Bull is in full technical and emotional restructuring after the fall of his hegemony. That is, the championship is more open than ever. But Ferrari is not knowing how to take advantage of it. That is the true tragedy of the SF25 until now. It is not a slow or poorly designed car. It is a car that promises a lot, but that does not respond when you need it most. A wolf disguised as a lamb that behaves with shyness right at the time of giving the blow. And that, in modern Formula One, is the same as giving up. In modern Formula One, time is everything. Not only on the track, where thousands define positions, but also in the work of development, adaptation, and tuning of a car. Ferrari knew it. And yet, it has fallen into one of the most classic and destructive mistakes that a tip team can commit: underestimate the complexity of the pneumatic package. Because in 2025, the SF25 has a silent enemy that is not seen in telemetry graphics but ruins every Saturday: new tires. The alarm was lit by Frédéric Vasseur after the Miami GP. His statements did not leave interpretations. Ferrari is not able to extract the maximum performance of the fresh compound in classification conditions. What in theory should be the key tool to achieve the perfect return, in Maranello it has become a technical trap. Both Charles Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton registered their best times with used tires. It is not an isolated mistake. It is a constant. The problem is multifactorial, but its effect is devastating. Ferrari enters the classification sessions knowing that your first round will not be the fastest. This forces them to build alternative batches, to overload the tires from the beginning, or even plan 3 attempts when other teams can solve in 2. The result is that the Ferrari go to the track in tactical inferiority. What should be opportunities to fight pole end up becoming battles for top 6. And in this Formula One so tight, losing 5 grille positions can ruin a whole Sunday strategy. Why does this happen? Because the SF25 fails to activate the new tire in the ideal thermal window. Pirelli has introduced compounds that require specific warming to deliver the maximum grip, and this is where Ferrari is failing. The way the car transfers energy to the rubber, both braking and traction, is insufficient. This generates what engineers call infra-compound performance. The tire does not degrade because it was never in the optimal range. The return does not arrive, and with it the position is lost. In circuits such as Shanghai or Miami, where the asphalt temperature varies between 35 and 45 degrees, this detail becomes an abyss. While teams like McLaren or Mercedes manage to optimize the tire work from the first curve, Ferrari needs 2 laps to reach that point. But in classification there is no time to adapt. A lap, an attempt, an opportunity. and Ferrari wasted again and again. The situation is aggravated with the equal performance on the grille. This year, the margins are so tight that a difference of 0.2 seconds can mean falling from a second row to the fifth. Frédéric Vasseur explained it clearly: the tires are extremely sensitive, and a single mistake makes you lose 5 or 6 positions. And it is exactly what has been happening. Ferrari has no margin of error. But the car today does not have a room for success. This technical defect not only compromises the classification, it also conditions the race. Leaving from behind means being trapped in the dirty air, where advance has become more difficult than ever due to the density of traffic and aggressiveness of current aerodynamic packages. The SF25, which was optimized for clean runs and stable airflows, suffers in the middle of the platoon. You cannot show your true rhythm if you are not in front. And so the vicious circle closes. In short, Ferrari is paying the price of a disconnection between design and operation. The car has potential. But that potential does not materialize because there is no effective correlation between what was planned in the factory and what happens on the track when the clock begins to run. And until they resolve this dilemma, on Saturdays they will continue to be the day of greatest frustration for red men. If there is something that defines Ferrari's DNA, it is his tradition of betting on big names. And in 2025, Maranello's team has, on paper, one of the most powerful alignments of the championship. Lewis Hamilton with 7 world titles and Charles Leclerc with the pure talent of who has proven to be able to beat anyone on equal terms. However, this luxury duo is trapped in a paradox. The more there are in the cockpit, the more obvious the dysfunction of the car they drive is made. And that is, perhaps, the most painful part of this story. Starting with Hamilton, his landing in Ferrari has not been soft. On the contrary, the British arrived with enormous expectation and an almost mystical narrative. Close his career where the mythical Schumacher did, looking for that 8th title that has been elusive since 2021. But reality hit him strongly from day one. The SF25 is a complex car, with an extremely narrow performance window, and that complexity is colliding with the fine, technical and rhythmic pilot style that has characterized Hamilton in recent years. During the first 6 races, Hamilton has been surpassed by Leclerc in 5 classification sessions. And it has not been due to lack of effort. In fact, the British has tried to adapt, even copying the braking style and entry into Leclerc curve as seen in Australia. But what has worked for your partner does not necessarily conform to your sensations. The lack of confidence in the back of the car has led him to be conservative in high-speed curves, wasting critical time that is then unrecoverable. There is a key detail. Hamilton in Mercedes had stopped deeply adjusting his style. It was the pilot around which the car was designed. Now it is he who must adapt to a car that was designed for another pilot. That role's investment has created a learning curve that has been more steep than anyone in Ferrari expected. And the most worrying thing is that, sometimes, he himself has admitted not to understand at all what he is failing. In a category where trust makes a difference, that uncertainty can be lethal. On the other side of the garage, Leclerc does not have it easy either. Although he is performing better in classification, and has shown a slightly higher pace in several stretches of career, he is also dealing with a car that does not behave predictably. In Shanghai, for example, a contact with Hamilton in the first curve damaged his front spoiler. But instead of changing it, Leclerc decided to continue the damage. Because he discovered that, losing front load, the car became faster on straight. This not only speaks of his ability to adapt, but also of the despair with which Ferrari is looking for performance. They are playing to balance defects with defects, and that rarely ends well. The technical tension also moves to the internal environment. Although there are no public friction signs among the pilots, it is evident that they are competing from disadvantaged positions. Neither can exploit their 100% potential. And that situation, when it lasts, ends up affecting morality. The strategic errors of the team, such as those seen in Australia and Miami, do not help. And every Saturday lost in classification is a new reminder that, for now, the talent of its pilots is being wasted by a car that does not respond. Hamilton has shown that, when he finds the sweet point, he can still make a difference. His return in the China sprint classification was a work of art. Precise, aggressive, to the limit. But those samples of genius remain sporadic. And meanwhile, Leclerc remains that pilot that everyone recognizes as fast, but has not yet had the right car to fight for a full title. In 2025, both are still key pieces of a project that does not start. In this context, Emilia-Romagna's GP will be a fire test. Not only for running at home, not only for the pressure of the Italian fans, but because it is the point where Ferrari must decide whether it has a solid base to continue betting on this project, or if you need a deep restructuring before the season is escaped from their hands. The Formula 1 2025 season advances with a relentless speed, and Ferrari is about to face one of its most symbolic and emotionally intense dates, Emilia-Romagna's Grand Prix. Running in Imola, just 90 kilometers from Maranello, is not just playing a race. It is to present themselves to their fans, its people, their engineers, mechanics, their employees, their families. It is putting the team's soul on the table. And do so in the midst of a technical, strategic, and emotional storm like the one they are going through right now, converts this appointment into a monumental challenge. The question is not whether they can win. The question is whether they can react on time. Ferrari arrives in Imola with a heavy backpack. They know that the SF25 is speed, but not enough at the moments that matter the most. They know they have an elite pilot's alignment, but trapped by the limitations of the chassis. They know that there is a margin of improvement, but the calendar does not expect anyone. So what can they really do in the few days that separate this critical point from the start of the weekend from their home career? First, factory technical work must focus on solving the greatest current obstacle, the thermal management of new tires. The SF25 fails to activate the Pirelli tires in the optimal window, especially during the classification. To correct this, the team has begun to work in settings of the setup that increases the transfer of energy from the chassis to the rubber. This may involve changing the weight distribution, playing with the fall angles, camber, increase the rake or modify the pressure of the tires. But any change of this type implies sacrificing another aspect of the equilibrium of the car. This is where the margin of error is minimal. In addition, a minor aerodynamic update is spoken in Maranello that could be introduced in Imola, a new front wing profile and a slightly modified diffuser. The idea is not to revolutionize the car, but to soften the unpredictable behavior of the rear axle, which has been one of the main sources of distrust for Hamilton. This improvement, if it arrives on time, must be tested to counter-relage in Friday's training. There will be no room for doubts, either it works or is discarded. Beyond the technical plane, Ferrari must solve an equally crucial problem: the emotional and tactical management of its pilots. The team needs both Leclerc and Hamilton to remain aligned in objectives, communication and strategy. And this requires absolute clarity from the box's wall. Decisions must be quick, precise and unambiguous. In races such as Australia or Miami, strategic errors in pit stops and calls at the wrong time cost key positions. In Imola, not even a bad decision can be allowed. Frédéric Vasseur also has the responsibility of marking an internal tone that moves the nerves and returns the focus. It is not just a performance problem. It is a problem of cohesion, of internal narrative, of trust between departments. The pressure imposed by Imola can break or strengthen a project. It depends on how it meets. Imola is not just a circuit. It is a symbol. And for Ferrari it is also a countdown. That of a season that can still be epic, or become another frustrating chapter of a story that has been waiting for a real redemption for too long.